everyone, I welcome you all to Analyst Ias YouTube channel. So आज का जो वीडियो है, it is about Plato's theory of education. Why so? Because last video में, last part में, जिसमें मैंने प्लेटो का स्टेट आपसे डिस्कस किया, प्लेटोनियन स्टेट, प्लेटोज कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ स्टेट के बारे में आपसे डिस्कस किया, वहां पे towards the end I left you with 3 questions and I also gave you the hint that the answers of these questions you'll find in Plato's theory of education. And I also made this commitment to you that I shall be coming up with Plato's theory of education as part of my next discussion. So here I am today fulfilling the same for you guys. However, there is one thing that we have to go through prior to understanding Platonian theory of education, of Plato's scheme of education. Why it is necessary? Because it will give you the answer of many whys that will pop up when you are going through Plato's scheme of education. कि ऐसा ही क्यों, किस वजह से, right? So इसके आंसर्स कि प्लेटो ने इसी तरीके की एजुकेशन सिस्टम को हमारे सामने क्यों प्रेजेंट किया, उसके पीछे की चीजें समझने के लिए प्लेटो की थियोरी ऑफ जस्टिस को समझना बहुत जरूरी है. तो बेसिकली ये कहा जा सकता है कि प्लेटोज थियोरी ऑफ जस्टिस एंड एजुकेशन आर वेरी इंटीमेटली कनेक्टेड विद ईच अदर. जिसके चलते पहली थोड़ी सी बात मुझे आपसे प्लेटो की थियोरी ऑफ जस्टिस के बारे में करनी है. इनफैक्ट जस्टिस का इंपॉर्टेंस प्लेटो के लिए इस बात से आप डिटरमाइन कर सकते हैं दैट ही एक्चुअली सबटाइटल्ड हिज वर्क, हिज बुक द रिपब्लिक एज कंसर्निंग जस्टिस. रिमेंबर वी did this discussion in the last video where I told you that the republic is also called as concerning justice. So he wrote a whole book within the broader context of justice. But you will wonder that republic also talks about education. Republic talks about much more than justice. Then why Plato was naming or subtitling his book The Republic as concerning justice? Well, this is because for Greek philosophers, what you understand today as justice, for Greek philosophers, justice held more wider connotations, wider meaning. The ambit of justice was much more than what we understand from the word justice of English language as of today. For them, justice was beyond that meaning which we conceive today. It was not just nyay, it was a just society and state as a whole. So justice, whole society and state was under the ambit of justice. So everything which was supposed to be part of society was also concerned with justice. So republic broadly actually was concerned with justice, which is why Plato went on to subtitle it as concerning justice. Now, while you have understood the importance of justice behind Plato's thought, education was something he saw as a more positive and spiritual way of reaching the same. So while we are going to cover up Plato's theory of education, you have to understand that education for Plato was a positive and spiritual way to reach to justice, actually. To reach to justice in society, actually. And since I'm telling you that already in Greece, justice had a lot of wider connotations, so definitely there was already some amount of work which was done prior to Platonian theory of justice, right, in the field of justice or in the discipline of justice. So what Plato did was, first of all, he discussed all the already existing theories of justice, like traditional theory of justice, radical theory of justice, pragmatic theory of justice. He discussed them all one by one in his work and he rejected them all. And then he came up with his own views. Then after discussing and rejecting all of these theories, he put forth his own views on justice. So what were his views on justice? See, he believed that justice resided in both individual and society. So justice was residing in both individual and society. It was a spiritual concept. It resided in a human being, and because it's all of us who are part of society, people together form a society. And he also believed in organic theory of state. So individuals were organs, right, of the state at large. State is individual writ large, right? So as justice in the state exists in a bigger and more visible format or form, he tries to explain it with the help of state. So state is constituent of what for Plato? Individuals. State is individual writ large, and justice is residing in each and every individual. So a lot of individuals together forming a society and ultimately a state for Plato. The wider picture, the bigger picture will be showing up in the state. This is what Plato conceptualized about justice. So he wanted people to look at justice from the spectacles or from the sight, from the view of the state, to ensure justice at large, right? According to Plato, like human mind, the state has three ingredients, namely reason, spirit, and appetite. Now, again, there is personification of state because he belongs to what? Organic theory of justice, organic theory of state. So he would start taking up state as an organism. So there is likelihood which has been referred to over here. Here Plato has tried to compare, in fact find similarities between human mind and state. And he is saying just like human mind, the state has reason, logics, spirit, soul, appetite, desires, right? And which are represented by rulers. So rulers are representing reasons. Rulers are representing reasons. Soldiers are representing the spirit, and farmers are representing appetite. Food, it is required, bhook, desire to have food, right? So rulers, soldiers, and farmers respectively. So wherever there is respectively, it means that you have to follow it up in the same sequence. So sequences, first reason is there. So rulers belong to reason, soldiers belong to spirit, and farmers belong to appetite. This is how it is, right? So this was what Plato believed as far as justice is concerned. Now you would be wondering how Plato is trying to determine justice in this sequence. See, he actually tried to tell people that there is certain rule and role. There is certain role for everyone in the society as per the individual capacity, which a person has to actually perform efficiently and properly without interfering in each other's work, without interfering in each other's domain. If everybody, Plato believed, was doing it properly and efficiently, there will be harmony and unity in the society. There will be harmony and unity in the society or state, rather, while we are talking about Plato. So everyone just has to stick to their own domain which they are good at, and they have to restrain themselves from interfering or overstepping the bounds, right? Now, if you have understood what justice was for Plato and how he was trying to establish justice in his society, you would ask that how Plato wanted them to know which category did they belong to. Remember, Plato has also categorized men into men of copper, silver, and gold. how was this categorization being done? This was also one of the questions that I asked you in the last slide. One of those 3 questions that I asked you towards the end, right? So actually, he wanted to, of course, help them determine the same through education. So how was education being conceptualized? Now I have come to a point that from theory of justice, I can transition you into theory of education for Plato. But it was important to know why is behind what Plato is going to do about his education now. So I hope those whys, the answers of those whys must be clear, right? So let's again go towards the story. So in the very first discussion about Plato, in the video about who is Plato, there was a war between Sparta and Athens I mentioned about, which was part of Plato's life, his life experience, and this incident did impact Plato a lot. So what happened actually was that Athens actually lost the war. Athens lost the war, which impacted Plato a lot, right? And he kept researching, he kept working towards finding the answer of, again, his curiosities, his why. His why was what made Athens lose so badly from Spartans in the war. So he realized that there was a sharp contrast between the education system of the 2 states. While in Athens, education was completely left on the will of parents, while education of children was completely in the hand of parents in the Athenian state. It was up to the parents how much they wanted to educate their children, in what way they wanted to educate their children. All was in the hands of parents. But in Sparta, on the other hand, the education was state controlled. In fact, children were actually separated from their parents at the age of 4 years. And parents had nothing to do with the education of their children. It was state which provided them education. And in fact, education was provided in such a manner to those children which was suitable for the social conditions of that given time period. So this was being done in Sparta. Plato somewhere found that this was one of the major reasons why Athens lost the war against Sparta, because of how the Spartans were trained to defend themselves or to fight off against the enemy, right? So what Plato did was he actually came up with a synthesis. He actually combined both the systems of education and in fact he added more to it from his side, especially in the part of higher education, and he came up with his own theory, rather theory it is as a whole. He came up with his own scheme of education. Scheme of education. So how was Platonian scheme of education? What all were its features? What all were its characteristics? Look at these. These were the features. First of all, state-controlled education. Plato vouched for state-controlled education. And education was supposed to be compulsory to all people of all class, regardless of gender. Everyone was supposed to get educated according to Plato, right? Nobody was barred from having education. And then positive means education was considered as a positive means which the ruler could use to mold the character of the people and promote spirit of unselfish devotion towards their duties of the people. Remember, in the justice, this is what required. You perform your own duties, any section, whether it be ruler, soldier, farmer, or men of copper, men of gold, men of silver, whichever category you belong to, you have to perform your duties. You have to do your work efficiently and properly and without any selfish, malice motive, right? And this is how ultimate unity, harmony, that is justice in the society was supposed to prevail. So education was a positive means by which this could be ensured by the ruler. Now, Plato did not find any difference between the native capacities of boys and girls, which is why he favored both should be given similar type of education. Remember, we were discussing Platonian thoughts in the very first video and I told you he was first feminist, right? In his theory of education lies the roots of why Plato was called first feminist, right? So, in theory of education, you get the answer of yet another question related to Plato, probable question related to Plato. Then, the men of copper, Plato believed, can be made into men of silver and even men of gold if they possessed their attributes. So, nothing was hereditary. It's not like you are farmer today, so your child cannot become ruler. Nothing was like that. Nothing was hereditary. Nothing was rigid. If your child has attributes to become a philosopher king, he would and he could become so. This is what was very egalitarian in the Plato's theory of education. Now, another feature was that morality was to be upheld in education and through education. There was a lot of emphasis on morality, so much so that Plato vouched for censorship of literature by the state, in fact by the ruler for the state. Why? Because any such literature which can propagate anything immoral in the minds of the reader, that was supposed to be banned, disbanded from the state. That was not supposed to go in the hands of the people. Which is why Plato vouched for censorship of literature, because literature at that time was major source of knowledge, right? So any wrongful knowledge was not supposed to be spread. Then Plato actually wanted an all-round education. So physical development was also aimed, and he held that healthy mind could only reside in healthy body. Healthy mind could only reside in healthy body was firm belief of Plato, and ultimately such kind of education was supposed to produce philosopher kings. Why kings? Why this is plural? I shall be answering your question shortly, right? But let's keep moving on and also understand what was the curriculum of Platonian education or Plato's scheme of education. So, as far as education broad categorization was concerned, it was categorized into elementary and higher education. Broadly, two categories. But these two categories had subcategories also. Elementary education had 3 subcategories for Plato. So from the age of 0 to 6 years, a child was supposed to read about religion, was supposed to be educated about religious institutions, rituals, and so on. Because religion, Plato believed, was a source of morality. Can you find some correlation between Plato and Gandhi, by the way? Do let me know in the comment box below. Then, from the age of 6 to 18, a person was supposed to go through the education of music and gymnastics. He was supposed to go through the training of music and gymnastics. Why? Because at this age, music helped in development of soul. This is what Plato vouched. This is what Plato gave in his concept, that music is going to help with the development of soul, while gymnastics was supposed to take care of physical development. It was supposed to take care of physical development. So from the age of 6 to 18, a person was supposed to develop his soul as well as his physique, his physical body, right? And this is rightly the time, the age, the time period where such capabilities at cognitive and motor level develop for a person, right? Then from the age of 18 to 20, a person was supposed to go through military education regardless of the gender, regardless of which class he is or she is going to belong to. In fact, a test was conducted after the age of 20 years, and those who passed that test were supposed to go towards higher education. Everyone else was supposed to go back to the society and do their respective work, whichever they were good at. If they were good at military education, if they reached actually to military education, they were supposed to become soldiers. Otherwise, they were supposed to become peasants, artisans, farmers, right? By the age of 18 also, there was a test which was there, but still military education was given, right? Military education was compulsory. All the education, all the elementary education was compulsory for Plato. However, after having done with the military education, a test was conducted. Certain people were with a high merit in the test went to next stage, that is higher education, while others went on to become soldiers after military education, and yet other category which did not really score as well, they returned to the society for other sorts of work, right? So this used to happen after the age of 20 years, or this was supposed to happen according to Plato, right? Then he came in towards higher education, and from the age of 20 to 30 in the higher education field, higher education was basically concerned with science and philosophy. Science and philosophy. So from the age of 20 to 30 years, for these 10 years, a person was supposed to study maths, astronomy, logic, and other sorts of sciences, right? And again, a test was conducted, right? And those who pass this test, they have to study dialectics for next 5 years. What are dialectics? Remember, on the very first day, I discussed it with you. Dialectics is a method of study, a method of research. Dialectic is one such method in which a researcher, a philosopher, scholar moves from top to bottom, from journal to particular, right? So in this method, to give you an example, a hypothesis is formed, something is assumed, and the work is not done to find whether it is true or false. The work is done, or the statements, the arguments are presented in such a manner in the aim to put that hypothesis as true. So if a hypothesis is done, then all the work is arranged in a manner to prove that hypothesis as correct. So there is a predetermined conclusion in the dialectics. This was a style of research that Plato wanted to come up with. So basically, if someone is saying something, he has to substantiate his statement with a lot more to state it as true. To keep it as true, he has to put forth multiple arguments to keep that statement as true, or to actually prove that statement as true. This was a method of dialectics that he wanted to introduce from the age of 30 to 35. And those who scored well after the test which was conducted in after this form of education, those people were qualified to become philosopher kings. Philosopher kings. Now, why philosopher kings? The reason is that the philosopher king, see, education is, this part of education is getting concluded at the age of 35. So philosopher king was supposed to rule from the age of 35 to 50 years only. So for 15 years, philosopher king was supposed to rule. Thereafter, next philosopher king would come up, and this philosopher king, after attaining the age of 50, has to go back to study. For what? For attainment of God. For now, this time the aim of the study is supposed to be attainment of God. So this philosopher king, education was going to be a lifelong process for philosopher king, right? Until he ultimately dies, until he attains God, so to say, the highest form of spiritual experience he gets. So this was the whole idea of or scheme of Platonian education, right? Now let me put across the same questions in front of you again. How was it determined that which person belongs to which class? How was it determined? Tests were conducted, right? And on the basis of those tests, a person, as per his or her attributes, as per how he or she was going to perform in those tests, it was determined whether that person is going to belong to men of copper, men of silver, or men of gold. Whether it is going to be a ruler, soldier, or a farmer, peasant, artisan, and so on, right? Then, is Plato's class system having any resonance with historical caste system of India? Do you realize that this class system is very egalitarian? They can climb up the ladders of the classes, but caste system in India, this ladder was not there. It was hereditary. It was determined from your birth itself, right? However, because here any resonance is asked, I am trying to tell you if there is none. While you can also figure out how resonance is there, because earlier varnas were on the basis of what work someone were doing. So here class was also based on farmer, soldier, ruler, some work that somebody was doing in the society. So that is also a similarity. So there can be a good comparison which you can make even further. Very scholastic comparison can be made, but right now I'm not going to dwell into it further. I'm going to keep it simple. I'll let you explore it for yourself. I'll let you write your answer and send it to us on Analyst Ias email ID, which is given in the description box below. The next question was, how was the philosopher king determined? This has been absolutely answered. There is a process in the scheme of education through which philosopher king is going to be determined, right? So this answer has been given to you, well understood, I hope, by everyone. Now, what you can do is, if you have not written these questions so far, the answers to these questions so far, you can write these answers and send it to us on our Gmail address, on our email ID, which is given in the description box below. And I shall see you again with another interesting video next time. Till then, take care. Thank you so much for joining in.